What's going on, everybody? Welcome once again to a brand new installment of Renegades Reviews right here on the Casa D18 Studio channel. I'm the Renegade J.J. Williams, and today I'm going to be talking about the 1989 dark comedy The Burbs, starring Tom Hanks, as this is Tom Hanks month right here on Renegades Reviews. Welcome once again, as I stated. Thank you for joining me on yet another installment where I take a look at classic movies and new releases. Obviously, more classic movies right now, as I am pre-taping these during the age of Corona, and everything is still so questionable as to what's opening up, what's not opening up, where you can go, where you can't go. I know in some states across the country, movie theaters have reopened in some capacity. Here in Southern California, where I am, as I'm filming this, movie theaters have not reopened. Therefore, I can't go and see new release films. Not like there's any really coming out right now anyways. So I have to resign myself to give you guys classic films. And what better actor to start off the relaunch of Renegades Reviews here this month than arguably the greatest actor of my generation, Tom Hanks. Everybody seems to love him. We've already taken a look at Splash. We've taken a look at The Money Pit. We've taken a look at Big. And today we're going to talk about the 1989 dark comedy, The Burbs, starring Tom as Ray Peterson, Carrie Fisher as his wife Carol, Corey Feldman as one of the neighborhood kids, Ricky Butler, Gail Gordon in a bit part as Walter Sesnick, and many, many others. As I stated before, this film is a dark comedy about a man and his friends sticking their noses essentially into other people's business in the middle of the suburbs. Ray Peterson is home on a week-long vacation. His wife Carol wants the family to go up to the lake, but Ray just wants to stay home, you know. He doesn't want to deal with the traffic to drive up there and the heat and the humidity. He just wants a nice, relaxing week at home. One night, Ray hears noises coming from the neighbor's house. Got some brand new neighbors just moved in. Haven't really seen or heard from them. And then you hear these weird noises. So he goes to check it out. And that kind of starts all of the shenanigans in motion. That's right, folks. This movie is full of hashtag shenanigans. He gets his neighbors involved. Rumsfeld, who's a Vietnam veteran, and Art, who, when he gets a hold of something, man, he just takes it and runs with it, and it doesn't matter to him how eccentric he ends up looking, how crazy he ends up looking. He just takes the ball and he runs. And in some cases, that's a very good quality to have in a person. But in this case, as you will find out, not so much. So one night, the trio witnessed the youngest neighbor, who, young is a subjective word here. The youngest neighbor is probably in his mid-20s. But the other two gentlemen that live there, one is a father, one is his uncle. They're in their 50s or 60s, so he's still the youngest. But one night, the trio witnesses the youngest neighbor taking an oversized trash bag out. Now, this bag is huge. It's probably akin to a body bag, which we'll get to in a minute. Taking this trash bag out and aggressively mashing it into the trash can, trying to get this bag to fit so the garbage man will take it away. That in of itself strikes the trio as something not really, normal. What's going on over here with this big trash can, this body? Whatever. They seem to assume that somebody's body is in the trash can. So the next morning they go over and they try to dig through the trash can to see what they can find. But there's nothing. The trash men have already been by, collected it. There's no evidence. The next day after that, Rumsfeld's wife, Bonnie, finds another neighbor, Walter. His dog is running loose. This is abnormal. Walter usually always has his dog by his side. Won't say he keeps him on a tight leash because he is allowed to run free. This was 89. The leash laws weren't near as strict as they became here in the last 20, 25 years. So it was a little bit more common to see dogs just run freely, and it wasn't as big a deal. But Walter always had his dog nearby. So for the dog to be just running around, no sign of Walter, something's up. What's going on here? At this point, Carol, Ray's wife, is just tired of all the conspiracy theories, the hype, the chit chat, and the insanity that's going on with Ray, Art, and Rumsfeld. So she organizes a welcome party, if you will. And Carol and Ray, Rumsfeld and his wife Bonnie makes brownies. They all collect each other together. They make sure to leave Art out on purpose because, as I stated, he's a little, gets a hold of something and he just doesn't want to let stuff go. So they organize this welcome party and they go over and they try to get to know the neighbors. The youngest one answers the door, Hans. They start talking to him. Then Uncle Reuben joins. And then later, the eldest one, Werner, joins them. He's a doctor, respected doctor. And they all hang out and chit-chat and socialize after a bit of an awkward start. It was definitely rocky. Everything seems to be going fine. Suspicions are being laid to rest. Maybe these people aren't as different as we thought they were. Let it go. Except Ray finds Walter's mail inside their house. And not just his mail, his toupee. Now they're really worried. Because first the dog's running everywhere, and Walter can't be found. And now his toupee is at these strange people's house. So Ray comes up with a plan. The Colpecks, that's the family name, said they were going to be gone the next day. So Ray comes up with an idea. He sends Carol and his son away for the day to go spend the day with Carol's sister. Gets Art and Rumsfeld together, and they organize a mission to get inside the house and come up with some clear-cut proof that they've killed Walter, they've kidnapped Walter, they have him held hostage somewhere, some kind of evidence. Rumsfeld is playing lookout while Art and Ray are digging through the house. They end up coming upon the basement. And the basement is set up like a crematorium. Red Flag City. Fireplace, there's human skulls. Ray's digging through the floor with a pickaxe. Strikes what he believes to be a crypt. But in the midst of everything, he breaks a gas line. So now the house is about to explode. Everyone's evacuating. Ray's trying to get out of the house. The house blows up. Just as the Colpecks, Carol, and her son, Ray's son, start to arrive back home. Police in tow because the Colpecks saw the light on in the house and they weren't home. So who's in our house? Here comes Ray staggering out, blown up, charred clothes, tattered, alive, miraculously somehow. After all, this is Hollywood, it's a movie. But that type of explosion probably would have killed any normal person. And while all this commotion is going on, who should happen to show up but Walter? Walter's arrived home. He had been feeling heart palpitations, had his daughter and son take him to the hospital. So he's been alive and well and just under hospital care for the last few days. That explains his whereabouts. Ray decides, after everything, he needs to apologize to Werner Kolpeck. And he tries to tell him, hey, I'm sorry. I'm going to help you rebuild your house once I get out of jail for all this. Forgive me. I haven't been in the right mindset. And now here's where the plot twist comes in. Spoiler alert for anybody that's never seen this, but then again, this movie is 30 years old, so I don't feel too bad giving out a spoiler for a 30-year-old movie. Werner reveals, essentially, that Ray and his friends were right all along. Brings up the human skull that he saw in the furnace, admits who the skull belongs to. It belonged to the former owners of that house because they had wanted to buy it and they didn't want to sell. So they just killed him, took the house over. So while they didn't kill Walter, who they had suspected them of killing, they did admit to murdering someone else. After the ambulance crashes into Art's house, they go falling off on one of the medical gurneys, rolling in the street. Werner's trying to kill Ray. The gurney crashes. They both go falling off opposite sides. Ray places them under citizen's arrest. The police want to know what kind of proof they have. Of course, Ray has none. It's just verbal. My word against yours. His word against Werner's. Except for the trunk of the Colpeck's car has come popped open. And in the trunk of the car are skeletal remains of all the victims. Ray's now a hero. He's caught these murderers. And all is right. Art tries to chase Ray down, wants to know what's going on. Ray says that him and his wife are going to go up to the lake, which is what she wanted in the first place. Gentlemen, listen to your women. If they had just gone to the lake in the beginning, none of this would have happened. Ray asks Ricky to keep an eye on the street. Ricky looks dead in the camera, breaks the fourth wall, tells the audience how much he loves this neighborhood, and we fade to black. I've stated over the last few episodes how there's no such thing as a bad Tom Hanks movie. There's only movies that aren't as good as others, and I definitely am going to put this movie into that category. I enjoyed it. It definitely had its moments. I don't know if it's a Tom Hanks movie that I can do repeat viewings of, though, like I do for Big, Forrest Gump, Apollo 13, Catch Me If You Can, That Thing You Do, Toy Stories, all kinds of other movies that we're going to be getting to over the course of the month. You saw the little teaser at the top of the show here, so you kind of have an idea of what all is coming. I don't think I can put this in that category. I am going to give this movie, come on, there we go, 2 out of 5 stars. It was definitely below average. Like I said, it's not something that I can watch on a regular basis, multiple viewings, but it's not the worst thing I've ever seen. It did have a little bit of foreshadowing in it, though, and I know nobody would have known at the time that it would have been foreshadowing. But there's a little clip in the movie of Tom Hanks watching Mr. Rogers. And 30 years later, in A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, Tom Hanks portrayed Fred Rogers. So definitely a little bit of unintentional foreshadowing, an interesting little tidbit there. The night before we see that, we also see Tom Hanks watching some horror movies. We see him watching The Exorcist and the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I think it would have been a nice little touch and Easter egg if they had thrown a clip of his very first film, which was a horror movie. I believe it's called He Knows You're Not Alone. Don't quote me on it. But his very first feature film role was a bit part in a horror movie. So if they'd thrown a little snippet of that movie as he was channel hopping, that would have made for a great Easter egg. But we're talking 1989, and Easter eggs weren't as big of a thing back then. You know, Easter eggs really became like, I want to say the late 90s to early 2000s. Easter eggs in films kind of became a big to-do. So that would have been an interesting little Easter egg, but I did enjoy the foreshadowing. Once again, 2 out of 5 stars for me. What do you guys think of the Burbs? Let me know. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. As always, I will try to reply to them. Be interactive, just like I've always done, whether it'll be here or like I do on alternate Fridays on the Jeff Meacham Network when we do Dads on Wrestling. Let's try to get those hashtags going. Hashtag Casa 18 Studios. Hashtag Renegades Reviews. Hashtag Renegade Returns. And of course, with this movie, there were definitely a lot of hashtag shenanigans. Tomorrow on Renegades Reviews is going to be a good one. It's going to be the film that was, until Forrest Gump, my favorite Tom Hanks movie. And that is, we're going to be discussing the film Dragnet with Dan Aykroyd and Tom Hanks. And this is also going to be an interesting broadcast because not only are you going to be able to find it here on the Casa 18 Studios channel, as per usual, but you're also going to find tomorrow's episode on the Jeff Meacham Network, as Jeff has been looking for other productions to kind of branch out a little bit so that it's not just him. So on the weeks that it's not Dads on Wrestling on the Jeff Meacham Network, you're going to see an episode of Renegades Reviews. So I will be in that Friday time slot every week on the Jeff Meacham Network.
We interrupt this episode of Renegades Reviews for an important announcement about
merchandising.
Merchandising? What's that?
Merchandising. Come, I'll show you. Merchandising, where the real money's made.
Make sure you go over to teespring.com/stores/Jeff Meacham Network for all the t-shirts you see here from the West Coast professor, Jeff Meacham himself. You can get shirts for the Jeff Meacham Network, Talk Wrestling, as well as the red and gold Meachamania shirts. And while you're there, don't forget to get your shirts of the Casa D18 Studios Brotherhood, the Dads on Wrestling shirt, the Renegade JJ Williams, Statboy Sports Bar, and the hashtag StatBoyApproved shirt. Make sure you go over to teespring.com/stores/Jeff Meacham Network and score your shirts today.
So until tomorrow, right here on Renegades Reviews, on the Casa D18 Studios Network, and also being broadcast tomorrow on the Jeff Meacham Network, when I will be talking about the film Dragnet. I am the Renegade JJ Williams, and I will see you next time.